everyone, and welcome to the It Depends Lessons in Technology Leadership podcast. I, as always, am your host. My name is Kevin Goldsmith, and every episode I try and bring you lessons from my, almost 35-year career in technology. A lot of that time spent as a developer, moving into being a more senior developer, then into engineering management, and then director, VP, and for the last 10 years, CTO. This week, we're going to talk about why execution excellence doesn't earn you influence. It's what I'm calling the reliable team trap. I thought about this as I was planning this episode. This is something I hear a lot of, and it's something that folks get trapped on, which is you're doing everything right. You're managing a team, you're delivering well, team's generally healthy, you get good feedback, and yet your manager isn't including you in vision setting and strategic conversations and things like that. You're feeling like you're doing well, but you're not feeling like you're being rewarded for it or getting more responsibility for it. What you might be doing is, if you're executing and delivering well, is getting more work because you're executing and delivering well. So you're proving that you're competent at your job. You're proving that you can do your job, and the reward for that is more of your same job and not maybe the job you're hoping to get, the next role. The confusing part of this is that nothing's going wrong. There's no failure to point to. And that's why it's hard to see. And it's also why the folks I've talked to, and I'll tell you about my own experience with this, but that's why it feels like, why am I not getting what I should from here? I'm doing well. Why do I not get more important responsibilities? Why am I not part of direction setting for my larger organization? Because you think you should be, because of how well you're doing. This came up recently from two very different directions at once. One was a leader running a large, high-performing organization who feels sidelined despite great delivery from that team, and another leader watching their successful team just get handed more and more scope without ever getting handed more and more say in the work. My own experience with this happened a while ago. I was a senior engineering manager. I took over a project that had a ton of innovation in it. It was a new technology for the company, so it didn't have widespread support yet. It wasn't adopted by any part of the rest of the company. But I worked my butt off to make it successful. I worked with stakeholders to get support, basically by agreeing to everything they asked for. Whatever they'd say, I'd say yes, because the team needed to deliver, and we wanted this technology to be successful. The team themselves did an outstanding job delivering against these really broad requirements. But the result, as we got that stakeholder support, as products adopted the technology, as they got good results with it, the result was just more requirements and more internal clients, which is success, definitely. The team was thought very highly of, but after years of working super hard and delivering to more and more clients and more requirements, we were in the same spot, and I was in the same spot as a manager. I was leading the same size team. We were doing more stuff. We were working super hard. But I, as a manager, I wasn't getting promoted. I was just getting more work. And my manager wasn't giving me more responsibility. And my peers, who I liked very much, but who honestly weren't working nearly as hard as I was, they were still my peers. So even though my team was out executing all of them and we were working super hard, I was getting no benefit from that. I was getting good reviews, but I wasn't getting promoted. I wasn't seeing any payoff for all this hard work beyond the work itself and getting more of it. I worked on this project for 7 years. Eventually, I left the team only because I didn't see a growth path for me in the organization I was in. I went to a different part of the company to work on another new project, not because I didn't enjoy the project I was on, but because for me personally, there was no career development. I was just going to keep getting more work, and that was the reward in itself. But I wasn't going to grow at all. This episode is about that gap between being trusted to deliver and being trusted to decide, and why delivering well can actively widen that gap if you're not paying attention. The surface question leaders ask, and that I asked, was, I'm doing great work. Why am I not getting more influence? The real tension, though, is that reliability and standing are rewarded by completely different mechanisms, and the organization hands them out separately. The force pulling one way, delivering well builds trust, and trust gets rewarded with more work of the same kind. More scope, if you're lucky, more headcount. I wasn't getting more headcount, so just more scope with the same headcount. More things to be responsible for in that kind of specific space you're in. The force pulling that other way, though, that's where strategic standing comes from being seen to have judgment about direction, which requires capacity and visibility that pure execution never produces. The better you are at absorbing work, the less room you have to do the thing that would actually change how you're seen. What's at stake if this goes unhandled? You become load-bearing instead of influential. The org optimizes around you as a dependable function, your capacity gets consumed, and your strategic voice goes quiet right when you need it to be loud. Eventually, the absence of that voice gets read as the absence of that ability. There's amazing leaders in your organization, in every company, who do outstanding work. They are the thing that keeps the entire organization going. And they are ambitious. They want more. But they're not seen as somebody who's ready for more. They're seen as somebody who's exceptionally capable at doing exactly what they're doing. This is why I like the load-bearing analogy, is you become so critical to the success of the organization just because you're producing and delivering so much of the critical work that not only are you not seen as somebody ready for more and broader responsibility, but you're seen as critical to the success of the organization doing exactly what you're doing, where now you've kind of locked yourself into a role. And it takes, like I did, leaving the organization to move past it. The mechanism that makes this idea concrete, that you are amazing at execution, but you are not ready for setting direction, is that somebody else is always setting the direction for your area. If it isn't you, it's your boss by default. And we talked about not letting your boss do your job a few episodes ago. This is related to that. This is very specifically around you not spending that time because you're so busy executing, though. As long as you aren't articulating where your part of the organization should go, your boss has to. This is what we talked about before. And that means when leadership or the board asks about your area, your boss answers in their own words, not yours. Not because they're taking credit, but because you never gave them your version to repeat. Now, you can be running the entire thing and still have the person above you narrating its direction. That's the difference between running an organization and leading it. You're doing all the work of the first and getting none of the standing of the second. The conversation I've had with direct reports multiple times over the last few years talking about this is I'll say to them, you're running your organization, you're not leading it. I'm leading your organization. I'm setting strategy. I'm setting the long-term direction. And until you push me out of the way and start setting the vision yourself, I can't move you up because I still need you to run the organization. Once I learned this lesson, this is the way I talk about it to the folks who I'm trying to teach this lesson to. Reliability buys you trust to execute. It does not buy you trust to decide. These are different currencies, and you can be rich in one and broke in the other. The reliable team is the one everyone counts on, and no one consults. Let me tell you about a couple people that I've worked with. One of them worked incredibly hard. She was working ridiculous hours, taking on way too much and agreeing to every ask and delivering on it through sheer force of her will. Her team was out executing the teams around them, but her leadership's response was to give her more critical projects because her team did them so well. Meanwhile, her team morale was starting to sink because they were so busy relative to their peers, and she was so busy that she had no time to think long term. She was seen as reliable and a strong executing leader of a team, but not being ready for more. Her peers were delivering less, but talking about their future plans more. And the management responded to that by rewarding them with more resources, while my mentee couldn't get any more help, even as the work piled up, because her team kept up their delivery even as they got snowed under. Her management would give her negative feedback about her team morale scores privately, while publicly celebrating what her team delivered. And her less hard-working peers were getting more responsibility and more resources. She expected that the good work her team was delivering would speak for itself about her leadership, while her peers did less good work, but they were more loud about it. It was incredibly frustrating for her. What it revealed was that the organization weren't punishing her by giving her more work. They were responding rationally to the signal she was sending, which is, we've got it, don't worry about it. This is the danger of being a reliable team. Not that you shouldn't be reliable, you should. But you have to balance that execution with taking the time for strategy. Let me tell you about somebody else I mentor at a much bigger company. His team was doing exceptionally well. And he was also working hard, not the same kind of hours, but working hard. We were together for a while. And I realized that he had really good strategic aptitude, but he was too in the weeds to demonstrate it to his managers. He was very self-reflective. He was very focused on improving his skills. He found the way to make more time for strategy. He realized that the more he did this, the more autonomy he got, and the more control his team had over their own destiny. His team was seeing as being good at delivery, but with a strategy in place, he was better positioned to decide which new work he shouldn't take on because it wasn't aligned to his strategy. And his manager saw this thinking, recognized it as strategic, and promoted him. The point of this contrast between these two talented engineering leaders is that the difference wasn't the quality of the work. Both their teams were doing excellent work. It was whether the judgment behind the work was ever made visible. And it was also whether they took the time to create, articulate, and align with a strategy. The work speaking for itself is a story we tell ourselves. Work doesn't speak. People do, and usually about their own work. A reliable leader is measured on output. A strategic peer is measured on judgment. This is that gap that we talked about before. I've got 4 moves for you that shift what you're measured on. They're not about doing more. Done right, they're about being seen for what you already do. Number 1, show the thinking. Report judgment and decisions, not just status. When all your boss ever hears from you is that the work is done, on track, shipped, they'll learn that you're dependable and nothing else. When they hear the calls you made and why, they'll learn how you think. That's the raw material of strategic trust. Number 2, build the bench. You cannot form or voice a point of view about direction if every hour goes to delivery. Building leadership underneath you isn't just succession hygiene. It's how you buy back the capacity that strategic standing requires. This is the move people skip because it feels like a luxury when you're underwater. Number 3, claim the contribution. Reliable teams chronically underclaim. They assume that the value is obvious. Connect what your team delivers to the business outcome it enables, out loud, before someone else's framing fills the vacuum. This is not self-promotion. It's making your org legible to the people deciding where the company goes. Number 4, take a position. This is the one that actually moves you. Setting your own strategy is how you push your boss out of the way of your own job. As long as you don't set the direction for your area, your boss has to. And that keeps you running the org instead of leading it. So bring a forward-looking opinion about your domain, not just answers to today's question. Put your view of where your area should go in front of your manager before they ask. You don't have to come fully formed. You do have to be talking about the future consistently enough that when someone above you describes your org's direction, they're repeating your words back, not their own. I'm hoping that this model will help you see that 3 of these, show the thinking, claim the contribution, take a position, are all about visibility. And one of them, building the bench, is about capacity. If you only work on the visibility moves without the capacity moves, you'll burn out. If you only build capacity without the visibility, nothing changes in how you're perceived. You need both of these. Nobody's going to hand you strategic standing as a reward for never needing help. How do you bring this in to your day-to-day work? What to assess first? Listen to your own status updates for a month. If they're all output and no judgment, that's the leak. Your manager has no window into how you decide, only what you produce. Look at where your hours actually go. If there's no slack, you have no room to do anything but deliver, and no amount of wanting influence will create it. If you remember in the way back, I had an episode called Own Your Calendar. And one of the things I talked about in that episode was an exercise I do every week where I look through my calendar and I figure out what amount of time I spend on different activities. And every 6 months, I go and I make a plan of what I should be doing with my time in the week. And if these 2 things are out of alignment, I put them back into alignment. That is one of the ways I figured out to give myself the time I needed to articulate strategy and to focus on long-term and do these things I'm asking you to do as well. How you can reason through these 4 different moves. On showing the thinking, in your next one-on-one, replace one status item with one decision you made and the trade-off behind it. Not a report, but a window into your reasoning. On building the bench, identify the one thing only you can do today and the things you do only because no one else can yet. Start handing off the second category, even though it's slower at first. This is the same trap as being too busy to delegate the things you're too busy to do. On claiming the contribution, once a quarter, write the 2 or 3 sentences that connects your team's work to a business result. Say them to your boss and your peers. If you don't have the language, that's the work. And on taking a position, pick one trend in your domain and form an actual opinion about what it means for your company in the next 6 months versus the next 2 years. You don't need to be right, you just need to be substantive. A common failure mode here is treating this as a volume problem. People respond to feeling overlooked by delivering even harder, which deepens the trap. More output reinforces the exact signal that's keeping them stuck. And why it happens? Well, delivery is the muscle that got you here. So under pressure, you reach for it. It's the available lever, even when it's the wrong one. If you only ever say, I got it, people stop wondering what you think. They already know that you'll handle it. So what are some warning signs to look out for? Your scope keeps growing, but your decision-making authority doesn't. You're running more and deciding less. Your boss is still the one setting the vision for your area, and you've just gotten comfortable executing it well. A peer with a smaller or less effective org has more visible standing with leadership than you do. Reorgs move things away from you, not toward you, and it surprises you because the delivery story said you'd earned the opposite. You hear positive feedback constantly, and it never converts into the conversations you actually want to be in. Scope is not the same as standing. You can get more to run and less to decide and call it a promotion. Let's talk about the human layer of this. The reliable leader, heads down, proud of the work, increasingly resentful that it isn't translating into more responsibility or a promotion. Often reluctant to do the visibility moves because they read as politics or self-promotion, which feels beneath the work. The boss, not withholding anything on purpose, they've learned this person handles things, so they stop bringing them the messy, undefined, strategic stuff and bring it to whoever is making noise about direction instead. The reliability becomes a reason to leave them out of the interesting conversations. The peer who gets read as strategic, often delivering less but narrating more. They've figured out that the story about the work travels further than the work. The team underneath. These are the ones absorbing the ever-growing scope. This is where the do good, get more, stabilize, repeat cycle does real damage because it runs until something breaks, which is usually a person. Your boss isn't hiding the strategy conversation from you. They just never see you make room for it, so they take it somewhere else. Being load-bearing and being influential are not the same thing. You can be the wall everything rests on and still not be in the room where the building gets designed. From my early experience, I learned that leadership wasn't defined just by delivery, and that by out-delivering my peers would get me acknowledgement about being good at my current responsibilities, but not recognize that I was ready for more responsibilities. In my new group at that company, I was careful to build strategy and worked with my team to deliver against it. It made it much easier for me to decide what to say yes or no to, and it made clear to my management that I could plan long-term and execute against that plan. I also made the plan visible, not only to my team and my peers, but to my leadership. And when my team delivered against that plan, we made that visible too. The combination of which is what finally got me my first executive promotion. What practice taught that theory didn't is that the leaders who get strategic standing aren't the loudest or the most political. They're the ones who made a deliberate choice to be seen for their judgment, not just their output, and who protected the capacity to have judgment in the first place. This is not a license to coast on narrative, by the way. A leader who claims contribution they didn't earn will get found out. The move only works when the delivery is real and the visibility is honest. It depends on having the substance first. In prior episodes, you heard me talk about this as taking a victory lap. Do the good work, then talk about it, and point to the outcome, not just the output. That's what it means to have the substance first, and that the visibility is honest. I used to think that making my work visible was politics. It isn't. It's the difference between your judgment being useful to the company and being invisible to it. What I want to leave you with is this. Reliability earns trust to execute. If you want to decide, you have to make your judgment visible and protect the capacity to have it. That's a separate job, and no one is going to do it for you. A test to apply this week? Look at the last month of how you've shown up to your manager. Was it mostly output? Or did they get a window into how you think and where you take things? If it was mostly output, you found the gap. Start with one move. The team that always says, I got it, gets trusted to handle the work and overlooked for everything else. Reliability is the floor. It was never going to be the ceiling. As always, I hope this has been helpful. I will see you next week in the newsletter, and I will see you back here on the podcast in 2 weeks. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to the It Depends podcast. If you liked it, please share it, please rate it, and please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. All music in this episode comes from Answers to April. For more information on Answers to April, visit answerstoapril.com. This is a production of Unit Circle Media.